Yeah.
Yeah. Here we are.
Here we are, yes, in another Journey to Creativity episode. Welcome, my dear friends, creative people, creative souls, full of light, full of love. Yes. I have a very amazing, wonderful friend here with me. He's a man who believes in the medicine of words.
Yeah.
He is a co-host of the Sweetie Treaty Show.
Yeah.
And he's one of the active leaders of Cypher Club. Here
Dun.
he is.
Yo, what up, y'all?
MC GoodMedicine.
In the house.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm honored.
I'm really honored to be here. And it's really exciting to be here because I do a podcast, and it's even taken me a while to call it a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And now I get to be on somebody else's show, and I feel like that's not only an honor, but exciting, I think, because you get to experience a production from the other side as a guest.
Right. You get to be on the other side of the mic.
Yeah, totally.
Yes. So I always love your intro with your name. Every time at Cypher, I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
So I want to hear that.
Yeah. So just introduce myself.
Yeah.
My given name is Michael Daniel Broadfoot. Honor my dad by saying Daniel is my dad's first name. My sacred name, or my Blackfoot name, is Apiskonaki, which means far shooter, given to me by my elder Mexican of the Siksika Nation. And my hip-hop name's MC GoodMedicine, because I believe words can be good medicine. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. And well, if you want to find good medicine in the world of the internet, you can find him on Instagram as MC GoodMedicine. Mm-hmm. He has also a Spotify Good Medicine, just like that, without the MC. And a Facebook blog, which is called Canvas Whiteboard, where you can find all of his thoughts, crazy adventures, and projects that he's currently working on. Also, the Sweetie Treaty Show, big shout outs to Sweetie Treaty Show. So much fun, so much light in this amazing podcast.
Thank you.
You can find it, the Instagram is The Sweetie Treaty, just like that, at The Sweetie Treaty. So perfect. Here, this is how you can find MC GoodMedicine, Michael Broadfoot.
Yeah.
And so
Thank
here
you
we
for
are.
Connecting.
Of course. Everyone needs to know how to find you.
Yeah, please.
It's important. So, here we are to talk about what moves us, right?
Yeah.
What we are both creative people. We see something in art, in expression.
So much.
And I'm so excited to start this conversation.
Yeah, and I feel like the questions that you have thought up here is going to take us on this great journey. So if you're listening right now, you're really going to enjoy this.
You're really going to enter a very mystical journey now. Yes. So Michael, in the morning when you wake up, when you open your eyes, what inspires you?
Yeah, it's so funny because I feel like I think if you're thinking about your health, how you sleep really matters. And I was sharing earlier before the show how mostly in my 20s I started working on myself, and I think I came to appreciate that feeling that you feel first thing in the morning. What do you do with what are your first decisions in your day? And so this past year, I was sharing that I've meditated and prayed for about 150 days straight. First thing when I get up, there's a couple exceptions to that where I was traveling and I had to kind of make adjustments. My Headspace app says I'm on a 157 streak, I think, right now. But there was some, it's pretty close to each day. Yeah. So, and I think, so when I sit down and I do my morning routine, is kind of what I call it, is, such an interesting place to wake up and go and meditate from sleeping, because people often complain about like falling asleep during a meditation, and I can see why. But I think it's such a great way to start to think about what is important to you. Because I know we're going to get into like what is my purpose at some point here. And I feel like at some points it's exactly this thing that I want to tell you about. And I can tell you all the reasons why you should know about this thing. But other days, like I definitely wake up and feel inspired by like how I'm feeling or what I need to be attending to, like what is my body experiencing. And so during that meditation, I feel like I get a lot of insight into like, am I stressed right now? Am I loose? Am I like the thoughts while I'm meditating? You know, what are when you have like a negative thought come up while you're meditating and you're paying attention, your body usually does something in response. And so I try and think about those things. And that's, I know that doesn't exactly say what I'm inspired by, but I think it can be different every day. And I really try and listen to myself in the morning during my meditation to what I need to be paying attention to.
Wow.
Yeah. And if I could just add a little bit to that around the prayer bit, when I finish meditating, I go and I pray. And so I light a smudge, and I do a number of things. You know, one thing I think that's been really helpful lately is I'll take the smudge and I'll smudge my lower back 4 times. Oh, wow. And I'll say something similar to this, where I appreciate all the things that are hard right now. And then I'll smudge my back again with my other arm. I appreciate all the things that feel uncomfortable. Smudge again, my lower back. I'll say, I appreciate all the things that are challenging in my life. And with the last smudge on my back, I'll say, because Creator puts nothing in my path that I can't handle. And so I try and remind myself of that first thing in the morning, before I'm like really doing anything. And there's a number of other things that I'll pray with. And so just saying it out loud, now I can tell it's an affirmation. I guess I don't really think about it that way. But it's so easy, especially being university students. My last year, I'm in all the tough courses. And there's so many times when I feel like I just can't do it. You know what I mean? Like there's moments where you're like, I don't know how I'm going to do this, or like I can tell I get stressed because I can't see a way forward. And so as much as I'm setting myself up to just be in a good place with my meditation, I'm also trying to set my expectations that I can handle anything that's happening. And my spiritual practice would teach me that everything is happening for a reason. And so this affirmation hopefully helps me to appreciate that instead of resisting the things that are hard.
Wow. That's a really powerful way to begin your day.
Thank you. Right? Yeah.
Empowered, aware of your emotions, aware of your feelings, aware of what's happening in you, because every day we feel different.
Totally.
Every day we begin completely different. You might have something on your mind from yesterday or not. Mm-hmm. You might wake up fully energized or not. And there you have something that keeps you going. That I know that you do a lot of community work, like you have been doing throughout the university, working with youth, working with indigenous students, right? Trying to include them, to make them feel more able to be included in the Canadian society, right? And also, you represent your indigenous roots, and I love that, because you're like one of the people that I know that are like constantly representing that with honor, with pride, right? And
Thank you.
And you bring it up, and I personally, I've just picking like little pieces, but I've been learning from you slowly through like just things that you say or experiences that you've had, and I think that's really cool. So you have some kind of powerful core that is that is motivating you to, even though you feel challenged in the morning, you don't feel good, you're like, I have to be able to do this.
Yeah. Right? Thank you for saying all those nice things.
Of course.
Yeah. I think, so one thing is that I'm, though I haven't published anything yet, I've been going through an indigenous research methodology for the past 2 years or so. And one of the things we talk about in indigenous research is my focus is around indigenous health, is being connected or rooted in community. And I think it's really challenging to feel a sense of community. I would identify as an urban indigenous person, somebody who is more like I didn't grow up on a reserve. I didn't grow up in rural areas. And about half of indigenous people in Canada, according to StatsCan, is they're urban. And so these ideas of like community work and who is your community, I think especially because it's talked about so commonly with indigenous culture, how we're connected to our communities, but because of the genocide that our peoples have experienced, that idea of community has really, been tested and is being tested. And so, I started doing, I feel like I've done a lot of like nice things in my life. And part of that good intent also comes from like not doing a lot of nice things, growing up. Like, I'm not saying that like I didn't care when I was young, but I was definitely like a troublemaker growing up. And, put in the dumb class kind of thing. And like I remember grade 6 getting like all these lines of like Latin expression. Like, do you know what I mean when I say lines? Like I had to write out lines.
Okay.
Like as a punishment. Have you heard of this?
Oh, like just like Brad Simpson?
Yes, like Bart Simpson. Right? Yeah, writing out lines. That's totally it. I was Bart Simpson writing out lines. And in my adult life, I kind of like, I guess you could say I was drawn to be more connected with people. And I think in a way, when we talk about God, hip hop, the hip hop gospel or gospel of hip hop talks about God as guiding our direction. And I think about that kind of experience of being guided by God, like I think you always are. As much as you might not be seeing it, but you're always being guided. And so I definitely think I've been guided to community work because I would also say that my gifts are with my voice. And I feel like there's a high demand for people who can use their words in spaces where like social issues exist. Like it's really hard. It's really easy to other people when they're not in the room or you don't have to talk to them. And so I think my like drive to do community work also came from like my fear and like dislike of institutional authorities that, I hated being in detention all the time. I hated being in trouble and I didn't understand why. I was just disciplined all the time. I was just in trouble. And so I have this like really strong disdain for authority. And so when I started doing community work, it was about working with the youth because I think I've seen myself in the youth, like, getting chewed up by the school system. And, I'm white passing, so I don't get the racism, that other Indigenous people experience. But I, definitely have done a lot of healing around my ancestors, and a lot of that comes from seeing your people, Indigenous people, healing and growing and being able to talk to them. It's really a lot of the community work that I've done has been with youth, and I think that's because I've been guided towards it. That's because I see myself in them. That's because I think there's a fact that if you're working with the youth, you're working with the future. No matter like how big your ego is, at some point you're not going to be around. Right. And the youth are going to be here. And so like if you're talking about making a difference, like build relationships with the young people.
Word.
Yeah, so that, I don't know if I answered your community work question, but I feel like
Yeah, I wanted to know where this motivation comes from. And it's crazy that usually we grow out of the darkness.
Yeah.
Right? It's either our own fuck ups or mistakes or right, or wounds, like literal trauma, right? Or bad experiences, bad decisions that make us open our eyes and see what needs to be done, or why this happened, or like you were saying, only through being on the other side, on the inside, you can understand. So that's
and I feel like I had a moment this summer where I was helping out with a ceremony, and at this particular time, kids weren't. There's like nobody who wasn't a part of the ceremony was supposed to be in this area, and kids were just running around like playing. And I said, "Hey, kids aren't allowed in here." And I was like really like stern with them, and I had this point of reflecting afterwards when I was thinking, like, I wonder how many times, and maybe I'm just putting this together now, but like from being told that you're not allowed to be here because you're a kid or something. But I was reflecting, like, how many times do kids hear that? Like, just because you're a kid, you can't, and not saying like there's for sure things kids should not be into or, be doing. But I definitely feel like, in the culture, like the white settler culture that we're in right now, we really compartmentalize the generations, right? Like, it's a funny thing to ask, what we're going to do with the old people, because we just think we're going to build all these old folks' homes. But if we look at other cultures, right, it's because we don't separate the generations, or they don't separate the generations. Like, as indigenous families, we would never just say like the old people need to go into an old folks' home, kind of thing. And it's the same way like with the kids, kids aren't allowed in adult spaces. And I think that's such an interesting thing. I've been a part of a few intergenerational spaces recently where we have the old people, the young people, and the middle people. And like when I was a part of that space, I was working on my indigenous research, and at any point I could like look at the youth or hear them and think, that's who I'm doing this for. Like, it changes, if you're not so divided, but we really do divide out, into age groups and, say you're supposed to be doing this. And so it's interesting. I just reflect on that a lot. I don't know if it's the healthiest way of
configuring our society.
Yes.
I agree.
Thank you for finishing.
Yeah. It's interesting with Tim. We've been talking about that too, like the old folks, because sometimes he has had the chance to go play piano at like old seniors homes, and they're like so grateful because they're like, oh, I hadn't like heard that jazz tune like so long. Or sometimes they ask for a song and he's like, you play it, and they're super excited, and it kind of like brings them back to life. It's like crazy to see them so happy. I went with him one time, and there's another there's this old man that goes to one of his shows weekly, so he wanted to play also, and he brought his instrument and he started playing around. And Tim is like, yo, I literally think that this guy is like staying alive because of this. Like, and he has seen people right? And also musicians that keep going with their music like until an old age. Their brains are so healthy, and you can tell, like, being over 80 and still being with a lot of energy and super awake and doing their thing, right? Playing music.
Yes.
Like they always did. So it's interesting how there's this possibilities of including people of different ages together, and actually we would earn so much from that as a society, like the interaction, like learning from the older folks. What do they have to say? Why are we so separatists? And it's mostly like what you say is this society, the way it's constructed, that we're like compartmentalized even year by year. Like in school, you're 6, you're in first grade, you're 7, you're in second grade, and you don't get to share as much with anyone else. It's that's super interesting.
Yeah. And I think the reason, for me, when I think about that importance of connecting the generations, I have to think about like mentoring the youth. Like, I know we're going to talk a bit about like hip hop culture itself.
You can.
Yeah, okay. I just want to jump in a little bit here. It's like when we're talking about like the culture of hip hop, like how the generations would be connected in hip hop, it was always the old guys guiding the young people, like the MCs coming up. KRS-One would talk about his process of like how when he raps, he MCs, he's talking to the collective consciousness of the people, and he's saying the things that he needs to teach them because he's the teacher. And I would say in a similar way, even though I wasn't necessarily, I was trying to do like rap stuff and hip hop while I was doing leadership workshops with youth.
That's cool.
I didn't see them as the same thing, like emceeing, even though I was on the microphone. Lots of times it was just in a classroom, but sometimes we were in like big theaters or whatever, and I'd be on the microphone working with like a theater full of youth.
Wow.
But it is the same thing. Like it actually is. And I've been really fortunate to be working with my friend Dwight Farrahat, big up Soaring Eagle. And we've been going to and we've been going to Calgary Young Offender Center and doing ciphers. So they're usually U18 or 18 and under. And that has been really great because I've been able to take what I've learned as a facilitator working with youth and like do a cipher with them. And the cipher is like sacred. Like it is so powerful to be in a circle. Like as much as we say that's a hip hop thing, people have been utilizing circles to connect for a very long time. Yeah. And so
very true.
The power of that circle is amazing. And I just want to say, like, Dwight Farrahat does so much good work using hip hop, working with his people and other people, especially like press peoples, to uplift and give them purpose. And I think, we're going to talk a bit about purpose. I think purpose has to do with how you express yourself or how you want to share how you feel on the inside. And hip hop, has structures to be able to do that. So you don't have to necessarily have those structures the same to be hip hop, because hip hop on the deepest level is your consciousness, is the way of thinking, is God. But we often talk about it as hip hop culture, which is spelled differently. Right. And then rap music, which is even more kind of removed from that, right? We're getting away from the culture. We're looking at like manufactured music.
Right.
But that power of the cipher, that idea of getting into a circle and just saying, what you feel, like you've probably been in groups of people where you're in conversation and you're sharing things. I don't think it's that different, except that the youth don't think it's that cool. And so when you do something cool with them that also has like this purpose, there's some magic that can happen there. So I'm really feeling that right now, being able to do that with Dwight.
Wow. Shout outs to Dwight Farrahat.
Yes, my man.
Another super cool member of Cypher Club. Yeah. I'm going to have to bring him here, apparently,
yes,
to talk also
he would
about
love
this.
to do this.
Yeah, that would be so dope. I've heard already, a couple of people have told me that I should bring him over here. Yeah. Wow. I feel like we touched on several things there. And hip hop, cypher, I've talked a lot about cypher and the effect that it's had on me and my creative journey and healing in this podcast too. Like how's it been for you? Since when did you start?
So I started going to Cypher Club because Zoe kept saying, you should come out. And like, I think when I was working on, like, I started seeing myself as a rapper and an MC, and I wanted to make my own stuff. And so I actually had a studio in my house. Like it wasn't like totally built or anything, but I had a room dedicated to music and recording. And I had tried to get like people to come over and to rap, but like they just like, and maybe it was also my facilitation skills, but we just never clicked in a way where we're like, okay, we could just do this. Like the chemistry, you know, was just never totally there. And so I was really focused on that. And then Zoe kept saying, come through. And when I went to Cypher Club, finally, because I can't remember what like the turning point was, but I just was like, yo, I should just come out. Like, and it was like the closest thing to what I was trying to make at home that I had seen. And there, like I started coming and I just had a blast. Like I had fun, I got better. And I remember describing it when I first got there was like a self-help group that's like fun and like, I don't know how else to describe it, but it just like, it blew me away, the things that were happening there, like the vulnerability that people were sharing at the same time as like the laughs were happening, at the same time as like people were practicing hip hop through their freestyles. People were bringing instruments. It was like a jam session. And it was just really clear to me that this was like an amazing thing. And actually the very first day I went was the very first day the Esteban Sound went. So I met Esteban the first night that I went, and we both met on the sidewalk. And as I was like walking up, he had kind of the same look as like, you're going to the same place as I am. Like it was kind of like, I think Jonah was skateboarding out front with Kareem. Shout out to young Papi Benito.
Shout out to young Papi Benito.
Simply Complex there.
And Simply Complex.
Yeah.
And Esteban Sound.
Esteban.
Certified.
Yeah, hip hop certified. Big ups. And so, yeah, Cypher, like I think the turning point for me for like when I seen that Cypher, like you get the impression when you first go, but one day I wasn't going to go, and I was feeling really angry and emotional. And I remember crying at this particular Wednesday.
Wow.
And we were doing introductions. So we go around the circle. Everybody's doing introductions, and like everybody's like saying their name, something from their week. And so like they would like stop talking and I would start crying, and then they'd start talking again and I'd kind of like stop a little bit, and then I'd be like crying again. I was just like crying in the circle, and I don't like nobody was really saying anything. And Zoe had said, just come. And I was like, okay. So then I like introduced myself, and I was like, my name's Michael Daniel Broadfoot. And I was like crying. And then I introduced myself, and then I said, I think actually the question wasn't about your week. It was like something about your why. And so I said it, and I'm like crying. And yeah, I just like remember crying like in the introductions, and then for like the first half of the night. And I didn't know what to do about that. Like I didn't know, like, should I be ashamed? Should I like say sorry to people? Should I just embrace it? And actually, at the break, I was sitting down in the chair, and young Papi, Kareem, comes up to me, and the best way I can describe it, he started doing a motivational freestyle. He was just like motivationally speaking to me, but like with flow and rhythm. Wow. And like to look around at all the cats at Cypher Club, you know, Kareem's probably like one of the harder dudes, like, and for him to come up and do that, for me to uplift me like that is not something that I would have expected. Wow. And also it like that moment where we were relating on the pain that we both had experienced and been through, like I just felt uplifted. And it was interesting because I don't think Kareem would be like, yeah, I really try and pick people up. Like, I don't think he would like say that, but it came out of him. in that moment. And I was like crying while he was saying it, like, but a different cry this time, was more of like a kind of a belief in myself cry. And so that night at Cypher, I probably was more vulnerable and more real with everybody than I had done in any sort of place before. And it changed. Like that was like, it was going there, was one thing, but then to like let yourself kind of fall apart. If you look on SoundCloud on Kareem's first, he calls it a mixtape now. It's like his first album he did. You really should check it out, Young Poppy Benito. He says intro for Mike. And he wrote that intro like off of the spirit of that conversation we had. And so Cypher Club has definitely like uplifted me. And today I get to be one of the Cypher Club leaders, where it's my responsibility to keep kind of the structure and the flow. And most importantly, I think like the principles of respect and having a safe space, having an inclusive space, welcoming space. So I get to do those things, which is, when Zoe first asked me, I was like, no, there's no way. Because I just like to come and show up and be myself and not have to think about responsibility. But then, because Zoe was going away, she needed people to hold it down. And I changed in my mind from, no, I don't want to do it because I don't want that responsibility, to I like need to do this because Cypher Club can't end. Wow. You had to stand up for the fam. Yeah. Had to happen for Cypher fam. It had to happen. And I appreciate so much, and we all appreciate so much your leadership and holding it down and keeping everyone in the space, because it can be, sure, like with Zoe, it was like she's such a badass queen, right? So she like amazing. Doesn't not care, and it's like, you shut up and come here. But sometimes it's hard to keep everyone paying attention, because also we're like in a creative state, so we're like, our minds are dispersed by nature. I think we're like totally, or sometimes that happens, whereas I don't know, there's other times where a solid circle creates, I don't know, I think every cipher is different. And I think as a facilitator, the energy level of the people involved matters. And so at Cypher, part of, I think, what I've been able to like apply my skills to is that the energy is usually there. Like very rarely do I have to like pump up. But then if the energy is there, your job as a facilitator is to shape that energy, to kind of set some parameters, where that energy is best expressed and where that energy is not best expressed. And when people are expressing the energy, the thing is, it feels good to them. So if you say, like, don't do that, they might take it personally. Right. And so there's a way of doing it that I'm learning, and so shout outs to people like Rubik's. Shout outs to Rubik's. And Zoe, Z the Free for their, and Bridget, I would even say Be Vita, which I think is coming out soon. Yeah, her episode's coming out tomorrow. Okay, right on. Because I feel like I've learned to kind of, from those people, how to like be tactful and respectful, and but also understand that we're preserving something for everybody's benefit. Right. And I mean, like, I don't think it'd be a stretch to say everybody's healing. Everybody's healing. Yeah, it definitely is. I was actually on the phone a couple of days ago with Zoe, and we were talking about healing, and as I was telling her, maybe I might need to go to therapy for something, and she was like, well, why not do it? But at the same time, she was telling me there's healing that happens in groups, and it's like something that's mysterious, and kind of like going back to what we were talking about before, community. It's mysterious what happens there, and it's so crazy how you said, I don't know exactly the words you used, but you were talking about hip hop and how in these circles it's like you find God basically, because it's this powerful
thing that's happening, and we're all like telepathically connected. We were talking with Tim earlier today actually about that same thing that happens when you're doing music with other people and you're connected almost like telepathically, because you're like in the same, you know what's, even in cypher sometimes it happens that the person that's right beside you knows that you're about to pass it on, right? Even without saying anything, and it's like whoop, and it
just seamlessly
keeps going. And the element of vulnerability and how that allows us to heal, that you probably have so much to say about healing and what it is and how you've seen it in around you and in yourself.
Yeah, I think like one thing I want to say about like healing with Cypher Club, because I think that's what we're doing there, is everywhere in our lives in the Western world, we gotta like put on an image. You know, we're trying to like control what people's perceptions of us are. And I'm not saying this is totally absent when you're freestyling.
Right.
But there's something magical that happens when you choose to just say what is on your mind and is on your heart, and to do it with other people who aren't bashing you. You know, that is the closest thing, you know, to a recipe. I think there's a lot of recipes for healing, but like a recipe for healing. I know, I think that release, you know, there are things that I've said, like for instance, the first time that I said out loud to anybody that I'm not just like some heteronormative dude, you know, like it was in Cypher, and whether people caught it or not, whether people, you know, for me, I just needed to like say that. And we live in like a really homophobic society, and so it's really powerful to have a space where people in the circle might not even know how to react, but you're all holding the same space, and so they're a part of that healing too. And so like, I don't know, it's just that power of being able to share is so like unfiltered, not share. Like, I don't know if it's sharing if you're trying to like leave an impression, you know. There's this quote by Stephen Covey that I really like. He says, so this is a paraphrase, but it's like, on how to truly be rather than on how to appear to be. And I think about that a lot, in the sense of like, I feel like and I'm not out of this rat race either, but like I do think about the impressions that I leave on other people. And I don't think it's helpful for my own self-identity or self-confidence. It is important, I think, to be mindful how you make other people feel. But I also, so like, I guess something else that I would relate this to is there was an elder while I was into Kamloops. She said to me, she said to our group, when you're looking at somebody else, ask yourself if you're looking at your own soul or their soul. And I think most of the time we're seeing our own soul. Like, we think we're looking at another person, but we don't know how to separate our own thinking from what this other soul is emitting into the universe. And so I think that's been a big growing opportunity for me, and healing opportunity, is to like, when people are freestyling, I feel like you can really see them, you know. They're not, it's pretty hard to front at a freestyle. So that's what I kind of wanted to share about like healing at Cypher Club, because I think like that's what is going on, is that people are being vulnerable. And if you're paying attention, you're seeing other people. And I don't think you get, like in our lives, an opportunity to do that very much.
So true. Yeah. So interesting what you're saying about like leaving an appearance on people, because that's also been one of the things that both listening, like, or in trying my best to capture what this person is saying on one side, and on the other side being very authentic and vulnerable, and like, and it's crazy because you don't necessarily know everyone that is there.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily know their points of view, what they will think, how will they take what you're saying. And that's the whole point. It's like, it's not supposed to matter. And I remember a couple ciphers ago, we also talked about compassion and like allowing, because it is a space where we are all allowing ourselves and everyone else to just be. And so, and none of us is perfect, and we all have different points of view, and we might collide, but none of that matters. And that's what's so beautiful, that regardless of everything, you are allowed to be there, whatever it is that you are being in that moment. And just allowing that to come out, to be expressed, like allowing that realness to come out is what allows us to heal. And something that I'm curious to know what you think about creativity itself, because you've experienced it mostly through emceeing, right? Through music, basically, and emceeing. And
yeah, like, I mean, I remember watching this interview in freestyle with Logic, and he was like, freestyling's an art, so I'm just gonna like, I think he's just, I can't remember what he said. It was like, I'm just gonna create, or I'm just gonna see what. And I remember thinking that was like really cool, because when we think about art, I think the first thing I think about is painting. Like that's art, right? When you go to an art class, or
right.
you know, I think like studying art history is, you know, and usually lots of it's sculptures and paintings, and
right.
But art is, it's you, and it's your expression, and yeah, and the like emceeing is one way that I express that art. And I think when I was younger, I remember, like, it's interesting. I remember being in grade 2, and we had to write something in our notebooks, and I don't know if you remember what those like elementary school notebooks look like. There's like different colors, yellow, red, green, whatever. So big lines or whatever. And so I'm like writing in it. And at some point I remember asking the teacher if I could just do the rest in song. And it was like funny because I hadn't written a song before, but I had like, and then, so I started writing it, then I wrote the rest in song, and I had the tune in my head. And then when I came back to it, I couldn't remember the tune. And so I don't think I did very good on the assignment, because I don't think it made sense as like a red thing or a song thing. It was like, but anyways, I think about those moments, you know, and it also, like, I remember we were doing I've had a desire to want to use my words, like to speak. And I remember being at the rehearsal for our Christmas play at this elementary school. And I couldn't, for whatever reason, I don't know if sometimes I have like this mild dyslexia, but I really, when I was younger, struggled reading words and then like reading them out loud. Like that process was really tough for me. And so I remember trying a few times, and I kept getting kind of lost. And instead of like encouraging me, they like took me and gave me a different role. And I really wanted that role. Like I really wanted to contribute in that way. And so it's interesting to think about those moments when your art was coming out when you were younger. I don't think emceeing is the only way that I express my art, but my words, you know, being an MC has always, I think, been in me in some way, but it's only actualized in my, like, the past few years.
Right.
Yeah. And I think creativity has been, like, it's so funny when I work in groups for, like, school projects, coming up with ideas is pretty, I don't want to say it's, like, easy for me, but I want to say, like, when I'm brainstorming ideas with other people, I almost expect that other people are just going to have things pop into their head like mine. And so I think I take some of my own creativity for granted, but I also think, you know, I think we were talking about it earlier, how like everybody is creative. Like I think part of being creative is just like being okay with what you're expressing, you know, like that is the label that you get if you're okay with expressing yourselves. You're creative. And so I think, you know, me expressing my art is really just okay, is me just being okay with expressing who I am.
Word.
And I think other people can be artists too. You just got to be comfortable expressing yourself.
Yeah. And that's where support from the community, having a community that supports you, that allows that space for you to be safely expressing yourself without the fear of being criticized.
Yes.
Because it's so interesting that you brought up like your childhood memories, because the artist that we have is actually like our inner child, right?
Yeah.
It's like this playful spirit that is like super honest and super like naive in a way, like trying, right?
That's so cool.
Just wants to have fun, that just wants to play with friends and like,
yeah.
And so if you have a repressive environment, and we're very repressed all through our education years, like 12 years is not enough. Then you go to university, you keep getting beaten, right?
Yes.
And so it's
so true. Holy smokes.
Right? So how do we, I feel like one of my missions, like I feel like a woman on a mission.
Yeah.
And what I feel as my mission right now is precisely bringing the awareness to people that we all are creatives, souls. We all have that spark, that inner child within, and we've just been educated and
well,
right,
and
like,
I think it's really interesting you mentioned that our creativity is our inner child, because I just kind of put this together now, but I was talking about how our society, the culture of our current society, likes to divide the ages up. Right. And so it also means like, don't bring your inner child to this space. So like, how are you supposed to be creative if you're not allowed to bring your inner child to a space?
They don't want us to be creative.
They don't.
That's why this is a revolution.
Yeah, we're pushing back. We're expressing ourselves to freedom.
Freedom to express ourselves. And it's crazy. We live in a privileged place in the world right now, right? And I feel like if everyone just owned this power that we all have, because you can literally create the life that you want. Like you can just dream, envision what you want, and like you were saying earlier, we are always being guided, and somehow this like inner child knows where it wants to go, knows where he or she wants to go, right?
Totally.
And it's like connected to that otherworldly like intelligence that is guiding you. So
for real,
it's like we don't really have anything to fear. Like if we were actually listening to those dreams, right? Because what if you had, can you imagine if no one, like if you didn't discover these things in childhood that you actually wanted to express yourself in a song, and you hadn't had any examples around you, like the hip hop culture to like show you, hey, actually you can do this, use your words in this way and express yourself. And if that hadn't been there, like, who knows what would have happened, but somehow you would have like found your way guided by that inner light in the end, right? So
this lyric, I so feel what you're saying, because this lyric that Rubik's has, I have to think of this song, but he says, if it's not my truth, then it's not me, you got me. And I think, that's so interesting. I think it's actually, if I don't follow my truth, then it's not me, you got me. And like that, I've been thinking a lot about that, because like you are the only one who can know what your truth is. But the thing is, like, our relationships around us always require these readjustments, like, because we're growing. We're not, as a human being, as a spirit being, we're, developing and changing in this human world, and we can't stay the same. It's not healthy to stay the same.
Yeah.
it's not saying don't stick with what's right, but it's that you, over the process and privilege of being here, because it's amazing that we're alive, and that whoever you are listening to this, that you are alive, because so many, I'm a biology student, so many decisions have been made between the cells that have been born that ended up like the billions of cells that could have been you, and the decisions that were made so that your development, you know, it's really magical that we're all alive. And
it really is.
Yeah, so, but this whole life that we live, you can get to know yourself more and more. Like, I think, you know, we kind of like see ourselves sometimes as like there's no depth to go into. Like, we're not, you know, I just need to kind of focus on the other people or whatever. I don't really need to get to know myself. But I feel like, dang, like you get this whole life to figure out like things that you like and to appreciate when those things change. Yeah.
Wow. That's powerful, because that's usually the youth struggle. I mean, I'm also like, I'm 32. So I feel like maybe in the last 2 years, I'm like starting to have an idea of, oh yeah, this is kind of like what I want to do. And I'm like figuring it out. I'm doing this. I don't even know what I'm doing, right? Like, like on the path of like discovering, oh, I like this. I want to use my voice, blah, blah, blah. But all throughout, like when I was 17, I was supposed to like, you have to pick a career, and that has to be what you stay with for life. And like, wow, that's so much pressure, and we have no idea. And I see a lot of people younger than me, friends, and just like people that cipher even that they're in school, they're in their 20s, and they feel that they should have everything figured out. And the truth is, like, instead of teaching us how to get to know ourselves, to discover who we really are, instead of teaching us how to discover our passions, how to express our emotions, how to like set goals and reach them, instead of all that, we've been learning stuff that we forgot a couple weeks after, right? Like, I don't retain most of the knowledge that I studied for 20 years of my life. Right.
Yeah, and I feel like it's really interesting how like some things do stick with you. And I had a story, but it's just left. I was just gonna say it, and then I was like, or as I was saying that sentence, but when it comes back, it'll come back. I'll share it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you see as your current like major inner battle, or what you're healing or working on?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So like I was telling before the show, I was telling you that I'm working on these relationship meditations. And so the first stage, you imagine somebody in front of you, and eventually this progresses. Like, you start with a little spark of light inside of your chest, but you also imagine a spark of light in their chest. And this spark of light is, during the visualization, is meant to be like kindness or whatever it is to you that's like uplifting and like connects or allows yourself to connect. And so kindness was kind of the one that they used if you didn't have any other one. And so it's pretty easy to like imagine kindness in somebody you like. And then the middle section, which is the next 10 sessions of the course, you do somebody who's neutral. So you're starting to like get towards somebody that you don't like, that you somehow hold something against. And so I've been working on visualizing my mom. And the reason I say that is because there's like, growing up was pretty rough at times. And I was just connecting with my sister recently about how sometimes the traumas that our ancestors have, they manifest in our lives today. And that my parents, coming from an indigenous heritage, have experienced or inherited traumas, and have not been able to figure out totally who they are, and also like how they can heal. And I was saying to my sister that we're the first generation that can breathe and kind of say, you know, what the heck's going on here? Why do we feel this way? Yeah. And I also read this book called I'm reading this book called It Didn't Start With You. And it was talking about life force, this force that motivates everybody to do everything, comes from your parents. And they got you to do this exercise where you imagine your parents in front of you, and you imagine the life force coming from them. And then you rate from 0% to 100%, how much of life force do you feel like you're getting? And when I did it, imagining my parents in front of me, it was like 15%. Wow. And that's because I felt really closed off from my parents. And I think part of it is because when you grow up in families who are dealing with trauma, they, like, people get hurt, but it's not like because that trauma is manifesting in them. It doesn't mean that the hurtful thing that they do to somebody else in the family is not, like, it's not really their intentions in the same way as it would be in a different context if the person had healed from that. And so I think, like, within my own family, we've talked a lot about healing, or trying to work on healing. And I said that I picture my mom there because I think part of what I'm working on right now is healing my relationship with my mom. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of like what I'm working on right now. And I think it's interesting because simultaneously you need to know how to protect yourself, because when people are traumatized, like I said, they will do things that'll be hurtful, but it's not them. But at the same time, especially when those people are your parents, you need to be at peace with who your parents are. And that's, I think, a tough thing to do. And but also there's healing in there. And it's not just like this binary of like, you're either hurt or you're healing. It's like kind of like a maturity thing where you're able to have those ideas of being connected to your parents while also not, it's not like I think letting your guard down might be like the wrong thing. So but like knowing how to protect yourself. So you're open, but you're also protected at the same time. So it doesn't mean like you're holding back in like a hurtful way, but you are just making sure that, you engage somebody where they're at. You know, you don't want to like feed into that energy, you know, of kind of negativity. So I think that's been really amazing because in the visualization, I can see my mom smiling. And so that's a pretty powerful thing to feel like you have kindness inside of you and you're happy. And, and to see my mom happy and smiling, I think she deserves that, even if it's just in my mind at this point, you know?
Wow, but that's a powerful visualization. I mean, you're using your mind to heal your own heart and also the relationship with her and both of your parents. And at the same time doing this work, thank you for sharing this, because this is like very personal and also very beautiful. And I connect to it in a very real level because I also have, I think we all have, our past generations have experienced like hard stuff in this world. Mm-hmm. My dad was born when Second World War II was in 1941. So it's like, comes from that age, right? And so I connect to you in that sense of like, it's more like finding that balance because it's a process. It takes a long time. I mean, I feel like you probably feel the same way. It's like something that you will probably work on forever. Yeah. It's finding that peace, that sending love, sending compassion, having, an attitude of deciding to forgive whatever it was because they didn't have the intention and all that. And like, if you don't do that, basically you stay with the hurt and you'll pass it on to future generations as well, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I always want to say when I talk about healing that if we could if you're listening to this right now, which you are because you can hear my voice, I want to just like suggest an idea that we can have a culture of healing. Like right now, when we talk about healing, let's give that some
healing.
We talk about healing only when we get sick, as if like when the symptoms come up, that's when you need to think about healing. But I think, one of the things, there's a few objects I pray with. And so I mentioned one of the things that I do when I pray. One of the other things I'll do is that have a number of objects that I carry with me. So one of them might sound a little funny, but I have my case for my cordless earbuds, and it's essentially just a battery. So a battery, to me, has capacity, has energy, and I had this is just like a strung together Michael story, but like I remember seeing on a YouTube ad, it was like some guru talking about meditation, saying that wouldn't it be nice that if when something happens that's negative, you had the capacity to respond to it instead of reacting to it. And I think that concept is really like, I think if we had more capacity in our life, things would not be a big deal. Like we wouldn't feel put off in the same way, we can carry our negative emotions. And so when I pray with this battery, I just smudge it and I say I'd like to have capacity in my life. And I say that because when I meditate too, like that's what I think I'm building is a capacity to respond. And as a human being, like as human as it gets, I know that I'm not going to be able to do that all the time, but it's something that I can work towards. And I think that's the same thing as having a culture of healing, where if we encourage people to have capacity, it's the same thing as saying we encourage people to heal, because when you are healing, I think, going back to that other concept of, or what the elder had shared about the person seeing the person's soul or seeing your own soul, if you're not healed and you're carrying around your pain body all the time, you can't help but see only the pain body. But when you're healing, you can see yourself, or you can see legitimately what's you and what's that other person. And so I think that idea of like building capacity it's related to healing, because you'll have capacity if you're practicing healing. And I don't just mean like in indigenous culture, we often talk about like the 4 realities. Mexican, we'll talk about them as like emotional, physical, mental, spiritual. And I think you can heal on all of those levels. Like the healing, like one of the prayers that I do in the morning too, is I'll smudge my hair and I'll say, I appreciate all the aspects of myself or the realities of myself. I want to be connected to the aspects of myself or my realities, that my realities may teach each other. And that as I heal as a whole human being and spirit being. And so I'll smudge my hair 4 times saying those things. Wow. And I think it's because our whole self is composed of these bits, so to speak. You, like if your emotional kind of part of yourself is healed, you're not going to be responding to people in the same way than if your like emotional part of you is totally tapped out. Like your emotions are not something you get to influence. They're just banging around and slamming into, like a car derby or something, like a demolition derby. And I think, if your mental doesn't have capacity, if you feel like insignificant, you're always going to be trying to prove that you're right or that your idea, because you don't have capacity for somebody else's mind in your life, you think, and I think things like ego come into that. Like even your body, like we shouldn't be eating good only when we're sick. That's like an incredible thing to think about, but you should be eating. We wouldn't be sick if we always ate as if we were sick, kind of thing. Right. That I'm pretty sure I learned that from Immortal Technique, but it's that same idea of having capacity to do things, and those are maybe some different ways of thinking about culture of healing.
Wow. I love this.
I'm glad you like it. Yeah, this is just things that roll around in my head.
Wow. Yeah. That's your inner processing going on that you don't get to share all the time. And I'm so happy that you're sharing it here.
Yes, me too.
Yeah. Wow. A culture of healing. That's huge. It's so deeply connected with cypher and
totally
hip hop culture, even, because it's like healing people to like see their worth and see that they're living in a fake reality, basically, right? And put in a situation that is not real, that everyone has the capacity to go so much higher and beyond wherever. And that goes to healing as well. We are capable of, maybe sometimes we can do it on our own, and that's when we need each other to like hold space for each other and allow each other to be authentic and real and express ourselves in creative ways. I find that for me, expressing myself in creative ways helps me heal, because I'm able to put it out in a way that I didn't know how to do otherwise.
Totally.
Right?
And I just want to take a moment here to say, like, not only are your freestyles good and your stories good, but like clearly through your expression at Cypher Club, you have become more confident in the cypher and like really like able to tell more articulate stories, or like I feel like I've seen that growth, or been a part of that growth. And I think that's really, the listeners got to know how amazing you are. They probably already know, but like, for real.
Oh, thank you so much for saying that. You've been huge in supporting me and inspiring me and encouraging me every time. I appreciate that so much, because you're like, yeah, you're doing great, and I feel like, wow, thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, I appreciate. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I guess it's a good way to. I had more stuff, but we went so deep into, and I think it's great. Like. The questions, we can do another show and keep going with the questions.
That would be great. We'll finish the other half, and it's
bring another stuff to the table.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's so funny too, because in the show, like the Sweetie Treaty show, they always joke, the other crew members. Shout outs to Wacy, Nick, Elijah, big ups to y'all.
Little light.
Yeah, little lights.
And Tea Leaves.
Yeah, DJ Tea Leaves, Jaflores. They always tease me that like if they leave the episode just for me to run, that it'll be too much talking. Like we'll go really deep into things. And that is like kind of like my autopilot, so I have to check myself sometimes. So I'm not surprised, and they're also going to think it's hilarious that this happened, because that's.
Oh no, it's amazing. Yeah. I love it, because that's exactly what this is about. Like, it's going deep into creativity, what it is, how it like, and healing is such a big part of it. It's like, it's one and the same, I think.
Totally.
It's all about finding ourselves, being ourselves in the end. And this is what it's all about. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to just say one more time that everyone here listening can find MC GoodMedicine on his Instagram, MC GoodMedicine, the Facebook blog, Canvas Whiteboard to check out. I'm gonna have to check that out. Like I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, it hasn't been like, I haven't updated it too recently, but it's the only place that I'll put like my own personal content that's not necessarily related to anything else other than what I just want to share.
Perfect. Canvas Whiteboard on Facebook. It's a Facebook blog. Hey. And on Spotify, you can find Mike as Good Medicine altogether. And also a big shout out to the Sweetie Treaty Show. Hey. I love the Sweetie Treaty Show.
Thank you.
You can find the Sweetie Treaty on Instagram as the Sweetie Treaty. And you can listen to it in so many platforms. Yeah. Right? You just go to the Instagram, check the link, and go to either Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcast, and Stitcher, and so much. Yeah, it's everywhere, so you can easily access to find amazing freestyling with amazing people of the city of the Treaty 7. This is also, by the way, recorded on Treaty 7 territory.
Yeah, big ups.
And so we'll see you on the other side.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
so much for listening. Yes.
Yeah, and thank you so much for having me, Vanessa. You're amazing,
Oh.
and this has been a really great experience.
So happy you enjoyed. Thank you so much
Yay.
for being here. It's an honor.
It's an honor.
Big up. Bless up.
Bless up.